Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Ghana, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Candy Wellins. She is here to talk to us about her beautiful book, Saturdays Are For Stella. Before we invite Candy into the studio, we have an announcement to make. We have a brand new Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Congratulations go out to Susan Arts. Her brand new picture book, The Green Gym, is our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. This is a beautiful, beautiful book, and it's like Susan's first book, Looking for Something. The Green Gym is dedicated to the memory of Susan's honorary niece, Lydia. In the Green Gym, we meet a beautiful little girl named Lydia, who learns about her family's treasured green necklace and spends a sunny day with her pet dog. And she also attends a princess-themed birthday party for her friend. During the day, Lydia faces choices that kids face daily, and this book finds a fun way to teach kids how actions and choices have consequences. We really, really love the social emotional lessons that are taught in this book. And we love the fact that it's so much fun. Kids won't even realize that they're hearing a lesson. And the illustrations are great too. So again, big congratulations going out to Susan Arts. Her brand new book, The Green Gym, is our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. You can read our full review at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Joining us right now from right outside of Austin and the great state of Texas, she is a debut picture book author. The name of her debut book is Saturdays Are For Stella, and I am so excited to introduce you to the author, Candy Wellins. Candy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm really excited for you to be here. Congratulations on your debut picture book. That must be pretty exciting.
It is very exciting.
Now, I'm curious how long, because a lot of people, they see the picture book is out. They have no idea how long it can take for an author to go from the moment they first take pen to paper or fingers to keyboard till the time the picture book is actually published. How long of a journey was it for you?
So I started writing Saturdays Are For Stella the summer of 2016, so 4 years ago. It went through many revisions. We sold it in August of 2018, and so that was 2 years ago. So really 4 years for this particular story, pencil to paper.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I asked you is, like I said, people don't understand. A lot of times people will look and they'll see a picture book with maybe 30 or 40 pages, under 600 words, and they say to themselves, wow, this must have taken the author about an hour and a half to write, but writing a picture book is a pretty complex project. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, all of those words matter, and there's really not a lot of space. I think, if you're writing a novel, you can get away with, some lazy words, or not everything has to be perfect. But with a picture book, you really have to nail it from start to finish.
And that is absolutely one of the things that people don't understand, because there's only 600 words. They have to be the perfect 600 words.
Yeah. And, with this story, it went through, I would say, probably 25 revisions. Probably about halfway through, I had a version that I thought was pretty solid. My agent sent it out. We got a lot of positive feedback, but people weren't in love with it. So I took it and kind of just brought it back down to the bones and restarted, and built up again to get the version that is out now.
Well, I want you to let us know why we should fall in love with Saturdays Are For Stella.
Well, I think grandparents are a really special relationship that most people can relate to. And I know, when I was starting writing, that was kind of an industry, what are go-to solid books that people always look for? Dinosaurs are always popular, construction trucks. And grandparents was one that, people can always relate to a good grandparent story. And so this story was meaningful to me because I lost both my grandmothers when I was pregnant with my first child. So I've always kind of thought of my life as, I had my time with my grandmothers. I have my time with my children. Mm-hmm. And I wrote this story kind of, for children and for the parents and teachers who are reading it to them to kind of be able to appreciate that time. And even though it's not forever, to enjoy it and not be sad when you lose a grandparent, but to enjoy the memories you had with them.
Yeah. That is, well, I know you said not to be sad, but that must have been a very difficult time for you when you lost both of your grandparents at such an important time in your life.
Yeah, it definitely was. It's just, I guess I was fortunate that I was an adult and I did get to experience my entire childhood with both of them. They were both, really integral in my life, spending a lot of time with them. So I was thankful for that time, and, you can only move forward. So I've tried to take the best of both of them and keep them alive, for my children. I think about them a lot in the things that we do, traditions that we've passed on, to the next generation of kids.
So tell us about the grandparent we'll meet in your book.
So the grandparent we meet in my story, her name is Stella. She's the Stella from the title. And she is a grandmother. She has a little grandson named George, and George is very smitten with her. The earliest versions of the story were actually kind of written more as a love story between grandmother and grandchild back and forth. And so they do all sorts of fun stuff. Grandma Stella is, not your typical just baking cookies grandma. Plays ninjas with George. She takes him to museums. They play video games together. So she's really great at embracing the things George likes and introducing him to some new and unusual things too. And so she's really special to him. And during, the course of the story, there is a point where George loses Stella. And that's really hard for him. And he struggles for a long time to, figure out how to move on. And even doing the things that they used to do together isn't as fun without Stella.
Wow, I can relate to that on so many levels. Fortunately, my grandmother lived a very, very long life and left about a year after my son was born. But boy, I do remember we did so much together. We lived in the same neighborhood, and I could just walk down to see her anytime I wanted, and she could walk up to see me, and we would oftentimes see each other out on the streets. And I don't think she ever caught me doing anything bad, which was really good. Tell us about what parts you're talking about your grandmothers and how special they were to you. I'm guessing that Stella has a lot of qualities from both of your grandmothers.
Yeah. So, one of the things Stella and George do together is they bake cinnamon rolls. And neither of my grandmothers baked cinnamon rolls, but one of my grandmothers baked a lot of cookies. So I kind of got that baking angle from her. And I think there's a lot of little subtle things about Stella. I think parents, we can be very rushed sometimes with our children because we have jobs and other obligations, and grandparents can really take the time and savor the moment with kids. So, some of the things are just like they take naps together, and, there's a bit where whenever they're shopping or whenever they go out of town, they always pass the toy store, and George always goes home with a toy. And that's just kind of one of those things grandparents will always spoil and indulge you in a way that parents don't always do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This again, I'm just loving the memories that are flashing back to me of the time that I spent with my grandmother. Just like Stella and George, she would take me to do things that I would really love to do and introduce me to all sorts of great things. Do you think that here in the U.S., in that our current culture, do we celebrate relationships with our grandparents enough?
I think it's changing for sure. And I know, like, my generation, I feel like we've become, more mobile. I don't live in the same state as my parents. My husband's from another state altogether too. So we've got grandparents for my children are scattered all over the country. And I feel like that's true for a lot of my friends. So it is a different time where, families aren't necessarily as close to each other. I think the great thing about now, though, is we do have all this modern technology where, my kids can FaceTime their grandparents. So there are still, we still work on making those connections because I do think grandparents are an important connection for kids, no matter the distance.
Yeah. That's one of the things. My wife's family is originally from Puerto Rico, and we've done a lot of traveling in Spanish-speaking countries and in Latin cultures, and certainly are a very, very big part of Latin communities here in the States. And one of the things that just stands out to me, one of the things I love about those communities is that it is very, very common to go to an event and there are parents and kids and teenagers and grandparents all dancing and singing and having fun together. And I don't see that as much in the greater U.S. culture.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that's unfortunate. And I do think it's, a missed opportunity because grandparents are, they love you as much as your parents love you. But there's kind of an understanding that just doesn't come from parents. I know, one of my grandmothers and I used to have a joke about, why do we get along so well? It's because we have a common enemy, So I think grandparents can just relate to their grandchildren and vice versa in a way that's just, it's just how it is.
I love that. I love that. We both have a common enemy. That's classic. Tell me, how do you're right. We do live in this time, and we are blessed with technology that allows us to see, via Zoom or Skype or whatever it is, have face-to-face through a screen communication with our grandparents and with our extended family. How do you think we can make that better? So we have this technology. I know myself during the pandemic, there have been times when, the whole family, you get 30 people on the Zoom call and it's really neat to be able to see everybody. But I have to tell you, I 10 minutes in and I'm zoning out and I'm checking my phone because it's just not the same. How do you think families who are separated by miles can use this technology to really kind of get as close as possible and not just have a quick 10, 15-minute Zoom call?
Well, I mean, it's kind of one of those things. I definitely think it's one of the benefits of the pandemic is we're learning to use technology in new ways that maybe we weren't 6 months ago. My parents love to FaceTime my kids, but my kids are young and, they can get bored easily and run off. But I think, we're seeing people be creative and innovative with how they use technology. Whether it's having dinner and sitting around and eating together in front of a screen, which we might not have thought of before, playing games together. We like to play trivia. So we'll bring in the grandparents and play trivia games, through screens. My daughter is a Girl Scout and the Girl Scout troop did a baking competition through Zoom. So I think there's all sorts of opportunities to take classes and explore things together online.
That is a great idea. I love that idea of playing games together online. I love the idea of doing that baking contest. We have another podcast that we produce here called Solve It for Kids, and we interviewed Katie Coleman, who is a NASA astronaut. And she talked about, being separated. She was in the International Space Station, and her family, her kids were on Earth, and they had an opportunity to have a video call, and they would read books to each other.
That's awesome.
Through the technology. Yeah. That if you can narrow the gap between out of space and Earth, that's something really special. Have you ever thought that there are families out there that are going to be using Saturdays Are For Stella to, grandparents in Massachusetts may be reading Saturdays for Stella to their grandkids who are in Texas or Arizona?
I hope it strikes a chord with people. I definitely can see it too, you know, not necessarily just being grandparents and grandchildren feeling the connection, but, you know, parents using the book as a way to help their children grieve a loss, whether it's a grandparent, a pet, a teacher, a friend, you know, and it's not always a loss from death, but it could be, you know, we take a job and we're moving across country, so you're not going to see grandma every day anymore, because that's a loss too, and that hits kids hard. So I think overall the book is about, you know, how do you process a loss and how are you able to move on positively from it?
Yeah. And that's actually something that's very, very relevant right now, because all of our kids all across the country, all across the world, we experience this really massive loss. You know, they lost their close friendships. They lost their ability to play tag, to chase each other around the schoolyards. And I know a lot of kids were, you know, they got through the end of the last school year with the hope that, oh, in September we'll be back together again. But it's looking like right now there's a real good chance that they're going to lose that, and they're not going to have the opportunity to go back to, you know, the traditional in-person school experience in September, and maybe not until 2021. So this sounds like it would be a great way to kind of have that conversation with our kids about that type of loss.
Yeah, because, you know, like you just said, there's all sorts of losses that children have to process, whether it's, you know, death, moving away, or just a change in how we live and how we do things. So I think that's kind of the greater message of the story is, you know, how do you reflect on, you know, the things you miss in a positive way, and how do you create goodness out of that?
Now, one of the things you let me know is that Saturdays Are For Stella is also, not only is it talking about the importance of the grandparent-grandkid relationship and also a story about grief, but it also is a great way to celebrate siblings. How can we do that?
So in the story, you know, George has come to this point. He's lost his grandmother. He's kind of given up on Saturdays. And there's a great scene. My illustrator, Charlie E. Ryan, did a beautiful job showing George. He's ripping up all his calendars, blacking out all those Saturdays because the day has just become a bad memory for him. And simultaneously through her art, you see that his parents have also started marking their own calendars in a new way. And George is to the point where he doesn't know what to do anymore. He's out of tears. He's very angry. He doesn't know how to process his Saturdays and his memories anymore. And then a new baby sister arrives, and her name is Stella. And George discovers that this new baby has given him a chance to share all the memories he had with his grandmother and share them with the granddaughter, her namesake, that she never got to meet. And so his Saturdays are once again for Stella. And he kind of discovers, you know, he solves his own grief by sharing those memories and those experiences with his new sister.
So cool. What a beautiful, beautiful story. And I'm so happy that you stuck with it. You were telling us early on in the interview it took 4 years from the time you had this idea to the point where it was published. What gave you the persistence? Why were you able to stay with it to make sure that Saturdays Are For Stella became a book?
You know, as a writer, you write stories, and sometimes you just believe in them so much that you just can't give them up. So I got a lot of rejections on it. I went back to the drawing board, and it was one of those stories I just kept working on, tweaking, sending it to my critique group, revising, editing, going back to my agent. You know, it was just not one I was willing to let go of because it was that important to me. So, and I'm really happy it found a home at Page Street Kids.
That's wonderful. Now, Saturdays Are For Stella. It's a book. It's out there. Families are going to be enjoying it soon. Is this it for Candy Wellins? Or is this one and done, or are there other books in you?
No, you know, you were talking about NASA earlier. My next book comes out next April, and it's called The Stars Beckoned. Philomel's publishing it. It is the first picture book biography of Edward White, who was the first American to walk in space. And And an interesting story about him, you were talking about talking between families in space. He and his children were the very first NASA family to communicate via space back in 1965. And his kids were 12 and 9 at the time. They called him from NASA headquarters. There's some great photographs online of it. All excited to hear about his walk in space. And Dad, all he wanted to talk about was how the week was going for them and talk to his son about his baseball game. So I'm very excited to celebrate his life.
Oh, that is so cool. Well, we are going to be looking forward to that. And I just want to extend the invitation right now for you to come back on the show to have a conversation about that book when it's released.
I would love to do that. Thank you.
Hey, in the meantime, where can folks go to learn more about Candy Wellins? We'll learn more about Saturdays Are For Stella.
So you can visit my website, www.candywellins.com. And Saturdays Are For Stella is available August 11th, anywhere you buy books.
We've had a great time speaking about grandparents, speaking about new siblings, speaking about loss and how we can deal with loss and how we can have great beneficial conversations with our kids about loss with the author of Saturdays Are For Stella, Candy Wellins. Hey, Candy, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We will be republishing an episode of Solve It for Kids, this week featuring Shaw Selby. He's going to join us to solve the problem of how we can use technology to help save the planet. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, earlier on, you heard us celebrate the fact that Susan Art's new picture book, The Green Gem, is our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. If you would like to know more about this fantastic program, please go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Author Services button at the top of the page. You can find out how this program could help you let the world know about your fantastic children's book. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Candy Wellins. Be sure to check out Saturdays Are For Stella. I also want to thank my incredible producer, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. I want to thank Augie the doggy for having my back here in the studio. But most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.